Hi, this is James Garden, the Senior Tech Geek, and I'm here with Pete Leday, and he is very knowledgeable in digital cinema, so I thought I'd get him on the show this year to talk about some of the information coming out from DCI and a lot of the, there's a lot of talk about potential jumping in quality in cinema and HDR, etc. So I thought I'd get him to help us navigate that sort of that bit of information and give us some direction as exhibitors of what to expect and where what all this means to us. So Pete, please just tell us where you're from again.
I run a consulting company based in San Francisco called Mission Rock Digital. I've been involved with broadcasting and digital cinema for many years. In the past as the Chief Innovation Officer for RealD, working on things beyond three-dimensional imaging, and before that at the Sony R&D labs in Silicon Valley. So I have cinema running through my blood.
Cool. And so you've obviously been over all those the DCI announcements in terms of looking into high dynamic range or deeper blacks and brighter peak luminance, etc. And where do you think we are with that, and what should an exhibitor take on board based on all this information coming out?
Well, this is a really exciting time. There's been lots of technologies out there, as you know, immersive sound, higher frame rate, expanded color gamut, 4K versus 2K, but I think that most people agree that the high dynamic range or extended contrast is one of the more meaningful, impactful image attributes that you could bring into a cinema. And that's compounded by the fact that it's been embraced by the studios and even Amazon and Netflix for home distribution. So it's hard to go into your local electronics store and not find a plethora of HDR displays, whatever that means. Yeah. So it's sort of a competition. If you want to be an effective cinema, if people are used to seeing dramatic, high dynamic range images at the home, you kind of want to have that option available to you in your premier cinemas.
Yes.
At the same time, several technologies have come to existence that allow HDR cinema for the first time, starting with the Dolby Cinema. But now there's many more that are options that are on the horizon available. And as you point out, DCI has taken the first step at publishing some draft specifications that start to outline what the future HDR specs might be.
So basically, this is not an easy or simple path forward. So we're having a well-considered discussion, like we just came out of a meeting partly discussing some of those issues like black levels, etc. And I can tell you there's a lot of talk happening here in LA, and I expect all over the world. One of those things I'd like to, I've been through some demonstrations while over here from Australia, and one of the things I did really notice is that the HDR that's happening in domestic televisions, the production studios in LA seem to really have a much better handle on how to use that as a palette for going to those sort of HDR displays, and they're itching to potentially expand these capabilities that they know are possible. And I saw them do some very impressive, like we saw some prototype HDR systems and Dolby Vision, etc. And I was extremely impressed with the results that were there. So the issue here is how do we get from that experiment or demonstration in a dubbing stage to all the cinemas around the world? And I think that's one of the reasons that DCI has started this discussion, and it's a sign to exhibitors that it's been worked on, and that it'll come, but it'll come when it's the right time for us as an industry to do it in a commercial way. Is that a good explanation, do you think?
Well, it's a good start, and I think that the key point is that you call it experimentation. I think it's gaining experience, and certainly because you've had this home video release opportunity for HDR for over 3 years now, yes, there has been many hundreds of films that have been remastered for HDR. It's created a lot of experience and frankly a lot of excitement among filmmakers, because when somebody sees a well-crafted, color-timed HDR release for home cinema,
yes,
it really punches out a lot more than you would get otherwise. It's right. A dramatic improvement. And I think what's really happened is that now that technology is available to bring that to cinema. So it's not that we're trying to move it into cinema based on experimentation, more that now it's enabled for cinema. We know how to do it, we know how to make it look good, so let's get that into as many movie theaters as quickly as we can. And I think it's important to note that there's a couple of technologies that have driven that.
Yes,
Of course,
I
the
wanted to
most
mention that.
prominent one was the Dolby Cinema,
Yes.
which is a very expensive, fancy, wonderful projector, arguably the best digital cinema projector out there, that uses dual spatial light modulators. So each red, green, blue channel goes through one kind of backlight and then a second modulator to be able to create the high contrast. The pluses, very bright; the minuses, expensive and not very light efficient. Now you have emissive displays such as the Samsung Onyx and the Sony CLED and others waiting in the wings, and you have a new flavor of projector called the light steering projector,
Yes, very
which is
impressive.
pioneered by
Yes.
Cineonic Barco and built by MTT, their subsidiary. And that's something really exciting, because now you can have a projector which no more lasers or light sources than you normally would have, but you could assign the light to where you need it to bring highlights, bringing you a very high.
That's right,
dynamic
and I
range.
think this is the light steering projector. I thought was a very good learning experience, because it really brings home to the fact that as a creator we have a budget of light,
That's right.
and we're not actually raising or lowering the actual average light across the screen. So the faces, etc., what you see on a 48-foot lambent screen today will probably look exactly the same. It's just that it'll get blacker, and it'll get the highlights will be brighter and more realistic. And this is a misunderstanding I find with a lot of people. Oh, it's going to be too bright, it's going to be this, it's going to be that. And that's a great misunderstanding I find with a lot of people when they hear about these technologies.
That's exactly right.
Yeah. Anyway, you want to add anything before we go, Pete?
No, that's it. I mean, you talked about a little bit about the DCI work, and I think it might be good to summarize that. As you read on the website, DCI is really engaged in trying to collect feedback from the industry. They have ideas about what would make a good high dynamic range image. And for example, they're talking about going from the 14-foot Lamberts that we use today to something way more than that, about 10 times more, 500 nits, or about 140-foot Lamberts. And the black levels, a fraction of what they are today, to create a very high dynamic range. Those numbers, according to DCI, were put together based on both aesthetic considerations, which means they've gone in and looked at many movies that were graded using those black levels and those peak highlights, and they find that those really add to the creative palette, and it's things that filmmakers would like to use. So it's not numbers pulled from a hat.
No.
But secondly, it has to do with practicality. So DCI, I know, has spoken to a whole number of manufacturers, both in terms of projection and emissive LED displays, and tried to propose something that, in theory, should be pragmatic. If not exactly today, then very soon. And that's the balance, trying to find something that's affordable, practical to implement, and yet makes a dramatically improved image over what we have today. And DCI has invited feedback from the industry. If you go to their website, I think they have a window open until the end of May 2019 to feedback anybody's opinions about changes to their draft specifications, which are posted now. And I think it's going to be a very exciting time during 2019 as that input and that feedback is collected and standards are finalized.
Well, thank you, Pete. And all I can say, I've seen some of these prototype solutions, and I can't wait. They look amazing, and I think it'll be a great day when greater dynamic range is a commonplace on our exhibition screens.
Thanks so much, James.
Thanks a lot. Anyway, that's James Gardner at CinemaCon 2019. Bye for now.